on federal property.
They just know when it's uploaded. I don't put.
Just remember the fact that when you get on an interstate highway, because it's federal, you in your car by yourself, you still have to wear a mask.
Yep, well, Biden didn't when he was on federal property.
Okay, so
We're celebrating.
Yes.
Be quite the,
Yes.
today is well, of course they're going to know now because I'm going to say the date. Today is Sunday, the 24th of January of 2021. We are still in Ezekiel. I know you are getting tired of Ezekiel. Ezekiel has basically prophesied us out of the Bible almost. He remember he was a prophet to the northern kingdom that was taken by the Assyrians.
right,
Since that time, the southern kingdom has been taken over by the Babylonians. Of course, the Babylonians have conquered the Assyrians too, somewhat. I mean, if you follow history, you'll know there were remnants there. And so anyway, so he's part of the northern kingdom. While did we lock the door? Oh. While hey, Prince, you can just have a seat somewhere. Either way. While there's several prophets in the south, particularly Daniel, which we're going to get into in a couple of weeks. It's going to be fun. In the meantime, the last several weeks we've been talking about Ezekiel's vision of the new temple, and of course, we've talked about this idea of prophetic distance. What was the term I used? Distance blindness or whatever. They can't. Man, I cannot think of the term now. Anyway, when they see visions, they might see several events in the future, whatever, and they can't distinguish what. Because everything's piled on top of one another, they can't distinguish what is happening near to them and what's happening further away from them. So in these visions, they kind of get grouped together. Some of the things that are going to happen after the exile, some of the things that are going to happen in the eternal kingdom, and we're going to actually hear some of that today, and it's going to be very very obvious because we're going to jump into the book of Revelation briefly to compare. So I know that y'all have been sick of cubits.
Yes. Thoroughly sick.
And such. So I can let y'all know that we're really not going to talk about cubits today.
I'm going home.
Before we get into how I say something about business.
Mhm.
I've been having a whole lot.
A whole lot of it.
Yeah, maybe in my time to go out there because last Sunday, I mean, they were had the all day. I mean, the sky, clear over, and then I see they took me up, took me up, and I see the heavy then you got everybody, my family, my kinfolk out there, and my brother say, well, you got to come and see me. Well, you got to come and die. I say, I can't. I had to wait until he take me up till I die because he was so heavy to see me.
we're going to Sunday school lesson.
Well,
Yeah,
friends, I truly believe God speaks to us in a lot of different ways,
Right.
and thank you for sharing. We really appreciate that. However, we're not talking about cubits today. However, we are going to talk about ephahs and hymns. So, yeah, I know. We'll get into that. You're going to be sick of ephahs and hymns by the time we're done. So,
Bring in the bacon. Eggs.
last week we talked a little bit about the sacrifices that were starting. The reinstallation of the priests, the reinstatement of the sacrifices and festivals and things like that. That continues today, and then after that we're going to get into the river. Y'all remember the river in that video we watched a few weeks ago?
Yes,
The
yes,
river.
yes.
I'm going to talk about that a little bit.
Yes,
Okay, so let me start our video here, or not our video, but our slideshow. And we call it The River and the Land. So let me move this up out of the way in case somebody joins us, they can see. If someone wants to read verses 1 and 2.
46.
Chapter 46 of Ezekiel.
Thus says the Lord God, the gate of the inner court facing east shall be shut the 6 working days, but it shall be open on the Sabbath day and opened on the day of the new moon. And the prince shall enter by way of the porch of the gate from outside and stand by the post of the gate, when the priest shall provide his burnt offering and his peace offerings, and he shall worship at the threshold of the gate and then go out. But the gate shall not be shut until the evening.
Okay, so why do you think that the gate would be shut during the rest of the week, but open on the Sabbath? What important thing is not supposed to happen on the Sabbath?
Work.
Work.
Oh, okay.
So why would it be open?
On other days, you mean?
No,
No.
well,
On
it says it's
Saturday.
gonna be shut on the
On
6
the other
working
days.
days.
Because
But on
they're working,
Saturday-
they're working days.
Nobody should be there.
Correct.
Yeah.
Nobody, well, they'll be bringing their things to the priest, but this is to the inner court. Nobody's allowed in there except the priest.
Right.
So it's going to be open because the priests are going to be what? They are going to be purifying
The
the
animals.
area, the altar, all
Altar.
that for the sacrifices coming up for the
Okay.
next week. So it's going to be open to them in order to do all this. The rest of the week, they're locked in there.
It's open for cleaning, yes.
And plus that allows them to move the carcasses and all that out of the way, get it all out of there in order for when everyone else starts appearing the next day to bring all their sacrifice and things. So, and then of course it talks about he is to bow down and worship at the threshold of the gateway. It's very similar to what Catholics do when they enter the sanctuary. They kneel and cross themselves. The Jewish priest, the high priest, is to give that honor to God before he enters that space.
Why does it say the prince is to enter from
The print, last week we talked
Yeah,
about
we
the
did.
terms prince and
That one
prince.
here.
And why they do this, I don't know, because most of the translations do this. Prince can mean 2 things depending on the word that's used. Number 1, it can mean the religious leader. Number 2, it can mean the governmental leader. In this case, it means both, because the religious leader is the government leader in this case. Okay, so that's why the word prince is probably used, but it does confuse people.
Mhm.
Okay, so on to the next. Verse 3 through 5.
On the Sabbath and the new moon, the people of the land are to worship in the presence of the Lord at the entrance to the gateway. The burnt offerings the prince brings to the Lord on the Sabbath day is to be 6 male lambs and a ram, all without defects. The grain offering given with the ram is to be an ephah, and the grain offering with the lamb is to also be as much as he's pleased, as long as the hemp and of oil for each ephah. Okay.
Okay, so we hear these terms ephah and hin. Ephah is about 22 gallons. No, I'm sorry, quarts, 22 quarts. Whereas a hin is about a gallon and a half. There's some controversy over what a hin would be. We know that it's somewhere between 5 quarts and 6 quarts.
Well, it's close
Okay.
enough for me.
Yeah, that's good.
But we don't know exactly where in there. So some translations will say 5 quarts, some will say a gallon and a half, that kind of thing. So it's somewhere in there. Okay. Verse 6 and 8, or 6 through 8.
On the day of the new moon, he is to offer a young bull, 6 lambs, and a ram, all without defect. He is to provide as a grain offering 1 ephah with the bull, 1 ephah with the ram, and with the lambs as much as he wants to give, along with a hin of oil for each ephah. When the prince enters, he is to go in through the portico of the gateway, and he is to come out the same way.
I'm going to tell you, if you've ever been outside when these men have that smoker going and that meat on there, that is wonderful smell.
Mhm.
And here they are, they're putting beef and well, what is that? And lamb chops and throwing on there, and they got olive oil that it's being put on there. it had to have been a wonderful smell, at least where they're burning it at. Okay. Anyway,
So question, when
Yeah,
they bring these things, who cuts up these offerings?
the priests.
Okay,
The-
so they bring the animal and the priests.
Mhm. And remember, the altar is set up in such a way, it's very big.
Right,
Remember
right.
the dimensions of it, it's very big. It's got horns, it's got these sharp projections that are on each corner. Those corners are made to hold the meat, to help cut the meat. In addition to the utensils that, we didn't get into any of the utensils here. Although, if you remember back when Solomon was building his temples, it got very detailed about the utensils. Same thing applies.
Okay.
Okay? The utensils that are used were used to cut up, to hold, to distribute, that kind of thing.
So he's a
No.
prince, he's a priest, and he's a butcher.
Yes, he is a butcher.
he gets tired of one, he's got something to fall back on.
Yeah,
When they talk about burnt offerings,
Mhm.
are they actually burnt up or are they just cooked?
They're well, a tenth of it is set aside for the priests. That is their lot.
Okay, so
what
that's
is
just
provided.
cooked.
The rest of it is burnt until it lasts no more.
What a waste.
Well,
No, it's going to God.
Well, yeah, that's true.
up in smoke.
the people
Yeah, up in
had to have some way to acknowledge that their worship has been fulfilled.
Mhm.
That their
Yeah, I mean, we give money offerings.
correct.
They gave what they had, which
Yeah.
was their
And
animals.
some ministers
grain.
will actually preach "give till it hurts." Well,
Mhm.
but it's not for that purpose. You shouldn't give till it hurts. You should give just because you want to. Period. That's the. Of course, there's an obedience thing to that too.
Mhm.
But that tithe, where that comes in, has to do. That tithe is for the purpose of the shepherd, the priest, the person. That's where the tithe originally was sent to.
Oh, because they got a tent.
That because the priest they were given no
Right.
land, they were given
Mhm.
nothing. So the people took care of them with that tithe. That's what that was for. So, okay. Did we read it? Yeah.
Yeah, we did.
Verse 9, I'll read this one. When the people of the land come before the Lord at the appointed festivals, whoever enters by the north gate to worship is to go out the south gate, and whoever's by the south gate is to go out the north gate. No one is to return through the gate by which they entered, but each is to go out the opposite gate. Why do you think that is?
I
There's a
have no
lot of
idea.
Yeah, it keeps the
So we
flow
spread
going.
COVID, so we spread COVID.
It's just going through.
It's to keep order.
Oh.
That's for self-explanatory. Man, if you've ever been to NRG Stadium on football day, that is a mess. So, okay,
Keep the movement flowing.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yes.
10 and 11.
The priest is to be among them, going in when they go in and coming out when they go out. At the feast and the appointed festivals, the grain offering is to be an ephah with a bull, an ephah with a ram, and with the lambs as much as he pleases, along with a hin of oil for each ephah.
Okay, so here we go with more bulls, more rams, and of course the last one was for one figure offering. This is a grain offering here. So each of the offerings were for different purposes, but it sounds similar because that's all they have. That's what they provide is part of what they care for and grow. So their crops, their herds, that's what they have to give.
Right.
Why does the priest have to go in and out with them?
Does yours say priest?
Mhm.
Oh,
Mine says
prince.
prince.
I'm saying
Okay.
it says prince.
Again, this is part of that. This is not, in some cases, it is the high priest, but in this case, it's kind of like the tribal priest, the tribal leader, which is also a religious person. So basically, it's this tribal leader is to go with his people in and out.
Just to be
At
sure
the
they
same
do
time.
what they're supposed to do.
Well, it's
or
leadership by example.
Oh.
Like the teacher.
Okay, 12, I'll get this one too. When the prince provides a free will offering to the Lord, whether a burnt offering or fellowship offerings, the gate facing east is to be opened for him. He shall offer his burnt offering or his fellowship offerings as he does on the Sabbath day. Oh, so there are offerings on the Sabbath. Then he shall go out, and after he's gone out, the gate will be shut. So the east gate, remember, is closed. However, if you're coming up to it for a free will offering, it can be open for that.
46 what?
Okay.
13.
13,
So yeah, someone 13 through 15.
I got it. Every day you are to provide a year-old lamb without defect for a burnt offering to the Lord. Morning by morning you shall provide it. You are also to provide with it morning by morning a grain offering consisting of 1/6 of an ephah, with 1/3 of hin of oil to moisten the flour. The presenting of the grain offering to the Lord is a lasting ordinance. So the lamb and the grain offering and the oil shall be provided morning by morning for a regular burnt offering.
Okay.
How long, morning by morning?
What do you mean, how
Every
long?
day they have to.
Every
do it.
day?
Just one lamb, so not every person.
Gee whiz, though, they go through a herd in a
Whatever
hurry.
is representative. So if you're, this is where it gets a little cloudy, because there are some scholars who will say that it is for each individual family. Some will say it's for each individual clan.
Mhm.
Some will say it's for each individual tribe or grouping, however that works.
Well, if
But we will say whatever is representative of that particular group.
a lamb every day, you gotta have a lot of lamb.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, you're gonna go through your herd that fast.
Didn't I say that last
But
week?
Yeah.
imagine how well how well they were able to keep stock.
Yeah, guess so.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't. My mind is just not working today with the words I'm looking for.
That's
Now,
okay.
if the grain has been made into flour and they moisten it with the oil, do they make bread?
Aha. There is one difference in this section that we have not read yet, and it is right there. The presenting of this grain offering to the Lord is a lasting ordinance. That we haven't heard that yet. It's a lasting ordinance.
Yeah.
Why? Because this is part of the priest's meal.
Ah.
So yes, bread would be made,
Okay.
but not all of it would be eaten. Okay. Because only 1/10 of it would be eaten.
Mhm.
You notice that it's also only a third of a hen.
Right.
So,
Right.
it's
so we're
less.
talking 2 quarts
Mhm.
of oil. So, okay, must have smelled wonderful. I love hot bread.
Making me hungry.
Yeah, that's the point. That's the point of Sunday school. To make you hungry. 16 and 17.
Go ahead, Ann.
This is what the sovereign Lord says. If the prince makes a gift from his inheritance to one of his sons, it will also belong to his descendants. It is to be their property by inheritance. If, however, he makes a gift from his inheritance to one of his servants, the servants may make it until the year of freedom. Then it will revert to the prince. His inheritance belongs to his sons only. It is theirs.
Okay.
The year
So
of freedom.
now we have shifted definitions of prince again. Now we're talking about the actual non-religious leader of the clan or group or tribe. Okay. And it's talking about inheritance because the priests don't have an inheritance. Okay. So basically, if the leader has anything of value and he gives it to one of his descendants, particularly a son, but if he gives it to them, it belongs to that son forever. Or the son can do whatever with it. But if it belongs to one of the if he gives it to one of his servants, it will remain his servants until the servant is no longer part of that grouping. Whether the servant dies or whether he's
He's freed or whatever,
Right.
yeah.
it would revert back to the family that it belongs to.
Question here about this, the year of freedom for the slave.
Mhm.
That's not part of the Jubilee offering, so what is it? Or is that a contract?
The Jubilee offering, we'll get into that when we get into Ezra.
Yeah,
and
because it's every
Nehemiah.
50 years, but I can't imagine a slave being,
No, we'll talk more about the Ezra, about the Jubilee offering when we get to Ezra and Nehemiah.
Okay.
So I don't want to confuse any of
yeah,
that.
I mean, because that's, you don't hear a whole lot about it, is one thing.
Right, but it still exists in Jewish.
Yeah, yeah, it still exists, but you don't hear about it.
Right. Well, we won't in a
If you're
Western.
Jewish, you do.
Well, I want to take a loan on the
So,
49th year.
Verse 18, the prince must not take any of the inheritance of the people, driving them off their property. He is to give his sons their inheritance out of his own property, so that not one of my people will be separated from their property. Okay. So we're about to move into the land,
Ezekiel 46.
verse 18. He can't take, once he gives an inheritance to his sons, he can't take it back. Okay? And the reason for that is at the end of this, it's so his people, the people will not be separated from their property. So what we're moving into in just the next few verses, you're going to see, or the next chapter, sorry, we're going to move straight into the division of the land again. And we'll do more of that next week too. But you'll see this. Basically, we're in a segue. We're in a set of segue verses. Okay. 19 and 20.
Then he brought me through the entrance, which was at the side of the gate, into the holy chamber of the priests, which faced north. And behold, there was a place at the extreme rear toward the west. And he said to me, this is the place where the priests shall boil the guilt offering and the sin offering, and where they shall bake the grain offering, in order that they may not bring them out into the outer court to transmit holiness to the people.
Okay. So once the offerings are given, they remain within the holy space. They don't come back out. And remember, the holy space also consists of where the priests live.
And so that's why he's saying it's not burned, it's cooked.
Correct. Those particular rooms, yes.
Well, it would be terrible to transmit holiness to the people.
I'm sitting there thinking about that for a minute. You know.
Well, you know, it's
Computer's not working.
in our Western mindset, it sounds rude, but in a
Mhm.
Jewish mindset, it's you have to know your place.
Oh.
It doesn't translate very well. To
No, it doesn't.
Okay. 21 through 24.
He then brought me to the outer court and led me around to its four corners, and I saw in each corner another court. In the four corners of the outer court were enclosed courts, 40 cubits long.
Oh,
Yeah,
Lord have mercy.
Yes, he did. And 30 cubits wide. Each of the courts in the four corners were the same size. Around the inside of each of the four courts was a ledge of stone with places for fire belts all around under the ledge. He said to me, these are the kitchens where those who minister at the temple will cook the sacrifices of the people.
Okay. So the corners of the court are where they cook these sacrifices too. So the food for the priests is cooked in those little rooms, but the rest of the things are cooked along the outside ledges there in the corners. So, I'm sure it was a sight to behold. I kind of wish I had been able to see it in person. Maybe if I find a flux capacitor hooked to a DeLorean or something.
Well, so there was a big difference between a feast and a offering.
Well,
I mean-
a feast was for all people.
Yeah,
And I'm going to say this wrong, but a feast was for everyone.
yeah.
An offering could be for everyone, or it could be for certain people or an individual.
Mhm.
So offerings could be made for a lot of different things, whereas feasts were for everyone.
Okay.
I thought they bled the animals before they did anything.
Well, they're
That's-
not to cook the meat they're going to eat in the blood of the animal. That they're.
So they didn't leave
I thought
those.
that's what those horns were, that they immediately.
Well, it was to dash the meat, yeah, to rip the meat.
Mhm.
Wait, but you said they're going to cook the animal in blood?
No,
No,
not
no,
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 they can't.
I was going to say, yeah.
Nor if it was say it was a lamb
Yeah.
or a kid, it was not to be cooked in its mother's milk either.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
good
So
grief.
we're on to chapter 47, verse 1 and 2.
Got it. The man brought me back to the entrance of the temple, and I saw water coming out from underneath the threshold of the temple toward the east. For the temple faced it east. The water was coming down from under the south side of the temple, south of the altar. He then brought me out through the gate north gate and led me around the outside of the outer gate facing east. And the water was trickling from the south side.
Okay. So we've got water that is coming from under the south side of the temple. And it's just trickling there. So there may be an underground spring. Of course, there were springs set up. We already know that because back in David's time, we hear about the springs that were there, the Gihon spring.
Mhm.
So we know there's springs there. So the temple area is being built on a spring. Okay?
It's a wadi today.
Or what? Well, you're right. And sometimes there, sometimes not.
Yeah, wadis are dry as much as they're not.
Someone read 3 through 6, well, 3 through the first sentence in 6.
3 through what?
3 through 6, but only the first sentence of 6.
Oh, I see. As the man went eastward with a measuring line in his hand, he measured off 1,000 cubits,
Sorry.
then led me through water that was ankle deep. He measured off another 1,000 cubits and led me through water that was knee deep. He measured off another 1,000 cubits and led me through water that was up to the waist. I think I'd turn around. He measured off another 1,000, but now it was a river that I could not cross because the water had risen and was deep enough to swim in, a river that no one could cross. He asked me, "Son of man, do you see this?"
So how far has this man of bronze, led him out into the water so far?
4,000.
Long way.
3,000 or 4,000
3 to 4,000
feet.
cubits.
Yeah.
Cubits?
Cubits, which a cubit is about a foot and a quarter.
Yeah.
So, right, so almost a mile.
Yeah.
Almost a mile.
Hmm.
At least 3/4 of a mile. And they're just out. And of course, he hadn't gone all the way across. It's just
Right.
up to his chest. So, yeah, we'll continue on. We'll get into the Revelation thing here in a minute. But remember that, okay? So the last part of the first part of verse 6, Son of man, do you see this? If someone will go ahead and continue the rest of verse 6 and go on through 9.
Then he led me back to the bank of the river. When I arrived there, I saw a great number of trees on each side of the river. He said to me, "This water flows toward the eastern region and goes down into Arabah, where it enters the Dead Sea. When it empties into the sea, the salty water there becomes fresh." How far am I going? Up through 9.
Yeah.
Swarms of living creatures will live wherever the river flows. There will be large numbers of fish because this water flows there and makes the salt water fresh. So where the river flows, everything will live.
Okay, now the NIV just says to the sea.
Yeah. Well, when it empties to the sea.
Well,
yeah, it's the Dead Sea.
Dead Sea.
It's okay.
I'm just curious.
Salty
No, it
water
means-
there
I'm
becomes
trying to
fresh.
picture the
Right,
Dead
has
Sea.
that happened yet? Has that happened
No.
yet?
No.
It's still as salty as it can be.
So we kind of get an idea of what's happening with Ezekiel's vision right now.
It's not working.
Well, no, he's seeing
It's not
further into the
happened yet.
future.
Yeah,
of
but
what
it
is
still
going on.
hadn't happened.
Verse 10 through 12.
Oh, sorry.
All right.
I don't know how I did that.
Fishermen will stand along the shore from En-gedi to En-eglaim, where there will be places for spreading nets. The fish will be of many kinds, like the fish of the great sea, but the swamps and the marshes will not become fresh. They will be left for salt. Fruit trees of all kinds will grow on both banks of the river. Their leaves will not wither, nor will their fruits fall. Every month they will bear, because the water from the sanctuary flows to them. Their fruit will serve for food, and their leaves for healing.
So also keep in mind, fruit trees of all kinds will grow on both banks of the river.
Wow.
Okay, and their leaves will not wither, nor will their fruit fail. Every month they will bear fruit because the water from the tree flows. Their fruit will serve for food, and their leaves for what?
Healing.
Okay. Keep that in mind.
We need more grass
Trees will.
for the lambs.
don't have any so far.
Verse 13 and 14.
This is what the sovereign Lord says. These are the boundaries by which you are to divide the land for an inheritance among the 12 tribes of Israel, with 2 portions for Joseph. You are to divide it equally among them, because I swore with uplifted hand to give it to your forefathers. This land will become your inheritance.
Okay, so if there's 12 tribes of Israel and it's being divided into 12 spots, why would there need to be 2 portions for Joseph?
It's for his 2 sons,
Okay, but then that would make 13.
but the priests don't, the
The
Levites don't
Levites,
get any.
Levi
Yeah, that's
doesn't
what
get
I was
any
gonna
land.
say. The
That's
Levi's
correct.
got none,
That's
yeah.
correct. Okay. So this is starting to sound very familiar to when they're entering the promised land originally.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Verse 15 through 17.
And this shall be the boundary of the land on the north side from the great sea by way of Hethlon to the entrance to Zedad. Hamath, Barotha, Sabraim, which is between the border of Damascus and the border of Hamath.
Yeah, you volunteered for this. Remember that.
Yeah, Hazar Hetakon, which is by the border from Hauran. How far?
Through the next verse.
And the boundary shall extend from the sea to Hazar-Renan at the border of Damascus. And on the north, toward the north, is the border of Hamath. This is the north side.
Okay. Yeah, we'll get into that in just a moment. We'll read just a little further. 18 and 19.
Okay, now watch out for butchering of words. On the east side of the boundary will run between Haran and Damascus, along the Jordan between Galilee and the land of Israel to the east sea as far as Tarmath. This will be the east boundary. On the south side, it will run from Tarmath as far as the waters of Meribah and Cashtis, then along the way of Egypt to the Great Sea. This will be the south boundary.
And then 20 and
It's probably a
21.
pretty good sized piece of land.
Yep.
On the west side, the Mediterranean Sea will be the boundary to a point opposite Lodo Hamath. This will be the western boundary. You are to distinguish this land among you are to distribute this land among yourselves according to the tribes of Israel.
Okay. There's still more. 21 through 23.
22 to 23.
Yeah.
21 through 23. Oh, did I already?
Yeah, we
read all of them twice.
22.
You are to allot it as an inheritance for yourselves and for the foreigners residing among you and who have children. You are to consider them as native-born Israelites. Along with you, they are to be allotted an inheritance among the tribes of Israel. One more.
Mhm.
In whatever tribe a foreigner resides, there you are to give them their inheritance, declares the sovereign Lord.
So they're not servants. They're
Hmm.
made part of the family.
Yeah.
Okay.
But are they
So-
then still considered aliens or are they considered part of
Once
the
they're part
family?
of the family, they're part of the family.
That's,
But
okay.
until then, they're foreigners. Okay.
Yeah, all right.
We're gonna, because we're done there. However, what I want y'all to do, think back to that river. I should have used another slide for that. I can't back up. This won't let me back up. So.
Okay.
I'm going to read from Revelation chapter 22. Now, this doesn't say much about the land, but it does say about a river. You'll hear it. Then the angel showed me the river of the water of life, as clear as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb, down the middle of the great street of the city. On each side of the river stood the tree of life, bearing 12 crops of fruit, yielding its fruit every month. And the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations.
Ooh. Sounds very similar.
Very similar. So Ezekiel is seeing a vision of this great river. Now, we don't know what the dimensions are of the river in the eternal kingdom, but we know that it flows from the throne of God. The river here flows from the south. The throne, or the actual Holy of Holies, was on the western wall, okay, of the temple area. So So Ezekiel seeing the water coming from the south, this can't be that river.
Mhm.
However, when he transposes his depth perception, he's
Yeah.
missing his
Yeah.
depth perception. There it is.
Uh-huh.
He is seeing the future river coming from God's throne and trying to make sense of that. Now, when it comes to the river that expands, at least partway, it's 3,000 cubits into it, 3/4 of a mile into it, and it's up to his chest, still can't, it's deep enough to swim in, according to him, and they still ain't got to the middle of it. We don't know what that is. This is one of those mysteries of the prophetic vision, that there's nothing in history that leads us to believe that that's the river of God's kingdom, because in Ezekiel's words, it couldn't be crossed, but in God's kingdom, there's fruit on both sides of the river. The trees, the one tree of life, these have multiple trees lining both sides. But in God's kingdom, the one tree of life spreads out so far that it has 12 different kinds of fruit every month. When we get into the dimensions of the New Jerusalem coming down from heaven in Revelation, I'm not going to get too deep into that, but it is very big, say 1,000 miles by 1,000 miles by 1,000 miles. So 1,000 miles deep, wide, 1,000 miles long, 1,000 miles high.
Is it an ocean?
Well, right. You think about water that has to sustain that. Maybe that's there. If that's the case, this specific part, chapter 47 of Ezekiel, is a very good argument for those that are premillennialist, meaning that currently we are living before the 1,000-year reign of Christ. Okay? Because of those images. Anyway, yeah, that's a whole thing for another time. But if you want to do more research into that, into this specific 46 or 47 specifically, but read the last, say from Revelation 17 or Revelation 18 all the way through the end of 22. It talks about that new heaven and new earth and all that, and you will see a lot of imagery that is that's similar. But if you read further, earlier into Revelation, you'll hear about this 1,000-year reign. Maybe I think it's chapter 16 or 17. It's just before that. So where people are living in the land, but they're also dying. They're not, this 1,000-year reign is not an eternal life yet. So anyway. Okay, so next week, we're going to get more into the division of the land. We got a little taste of it today. We saw the boundaries of it today. Now next week, we're going to get into which tribes have what. By the way, it's about 80 miles by 60 miles. 80 miles long by 60 miles wide is basically what it comes to. So,
No, what is? I missed that.
The boundaries that we just read.
Okay.
It would seem bigger, but you got to remember Israel is really not big.
Small.
No, it isn't.
But
They got a lot of animals.
But it does coincide with the area. The dimensions we just got coincides roughly to the same area that God promised them, the promised land. So,
Okay.
and then we'll get back. We'll go back to chapter 29 of Ezekiel, read about prophecy of Egypt, and then we'll go. Then I'll determine whether we'll do chapter 30 next week or not. Chapter 30 is not very big, but I may include that the week before or the week after as we get into Daniel. So we're 2 weeks from Daniel, guys.
We're still cubiting though.
Well, no.
I saw that and I said, Oh my God, here we go.
So let me close this out. Thank y'all for being here and
So did you pick something or we?
y'all have a wonderful
You know
week.
where Whistle Stop is?
Where's the stop?